fast forward now, actually just about 2 weeks ago I officially launched our own content studio, which is called Pretend Labs. We handle VR, AR, even 360 filming, and also some mixed reality and Hololens projects for mostly business-to-business interactions right now. We are working on some internal projects, so be on the lookout. But right now we're mostly managing it as a business-to-business scenario. It's been pretty lucrative thus far, and now I'm here to tell you guys about what I found in the different realities I've been through. I don't know how versed you guys are, so there may be some basic info that a lot of you guys already know in here. However, I feel it's kind of complimentary to go through everything, just so that by the time I get to the part about mixed reality and such, you kind of have a little bit of knowledge so that you can be dangerous with it, all right? So first, mixed reality overview. So first thing I'm going to go through is the Unity software. So thank God for Unity, who gives a lot of free stuff away. Without having essentially a proper engine to even develop these applications and experiences, honestly, I would not have gotten this far within this past year. So obviously that's going to be our first area. Then I'm going to touch on virtual reality a little bit, augmented, and then we're going to get into mixed reality, 3D scanning, and then some tools and links. After this, I'm going to be sharing this, this presentation, so be on the lookout for that. There's a lot of tools if you ever want to start doing some mixed reality filming and such, as well as a lot of knowledge contained in there that I found, because as you'll see, it's a little bit more difficult than it may sound. So first, let's go into it. Unity. So everything you need to succeed, I said in VR and AR. All right. So with Unity, you can create any 2D or 3D game. More recently, they started stepping into the actual cinematics. What you'll see here is actually something called the Atom demo. Anybody heard of the Atom demo? Yes, no, maybe so. So Atom demo, which I should hopefully be able to show you momentarily, if all goes well. Yep. Is strictly created in Unity. There is no motion capture involved. There is no green screening involved or anything like that. There's no motion capture involved. They actually use the tool to actually flip a skeleton, so a model on this actual 3D model, and then move him kind of like into a display animation or a stop motion, and literally move him into the 3D itself. All the lighting is done straight within Unity. You can even yep. You know, so obviously that demo was pretty big actually. Since they've released that, they've actually started to move more towards producing cinematics within the actual program itself, and started to even release some tools for you to put 360 video now in there seamlessly. So now within Unity, you can develop your own 360 VR, cinematic VR experiences, honestly within about 3 different motions. You just create a sphere, you put your video on that sphere, and then you put the camera inside of it and invert it. That's pretty much it. And then from that, you'll have your own, technically an application or video, depending on how you export it, to showcase. So just to go over some of the tips there. So obviously capable of creating 2D, 3D games if you guys were into that. Capable of creating cinematic quality videos, creating VR, AR experiences, also multi-platform support. So you can develop on iOS, Android, Windows, Linux, Mac, Vive, Oculus, you know, the whole nine. So it's definitely top notch. And then they've started to add obviously more services just so that you can start monetizing off of it. So they have analytics, they have different tools that you can use to obviously make it improve. They have Unity ads, so you can even just make a free app and throw Unity's own ads on there. Now we're going to touch into virtual reality. So obviously virtual reality, you know, I'm sure since you guys are here, you guys have experienced it at least once, but essentially is a full-on immersive experience that, depending on what hardware you're using, can allow you certain types of freedom within that experience. So there's a couple of different analogies. So you have 3DOF, 3 dimensions of freedom. Usually that's within like cardboards or even the Gear VR viewers. So you can move your head around, look around and such, but you know, you can't take a step forward or backwards or anything. Then you have 6 degrees of freedom. That's what would be in the Vive and the Oculus. You know, obviously you can swing your hands. You know, if you have some trackers, you can kick some soccer balls around. You know, do everything that you really like. You know, these are just kind of some of the basic vocabulary. So we have HMDs, head-mounted displays. Presence is obviously used very widely when describing these experiences. One thing to always worry about when developing is motion sickness. Depending on how you move people around, it can kind of jitter them up. And then also, as you get into cinematic VR, you know about stereoscopic 3D. That really just involves getting the proper dimensions down so that you're obviously seeing not a flat image anymore. So let's keep moving. All right, so obviously just to go through some of the devices, we have the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, PlayStation VR, Samsung Gear VR, obviously some general cardboards, which if you guys are coming to the experiences tomorrow that myself and Mark will be holding, we actually have some New York Independent Film Festival cardboards for you guys. So please come on down and check those out. And then obviously the Google Daydream View. There are some other ones that have been, I want to say fundraised probably through Kickstarter, and also some other companies that are working on their own devices, but right now this is kind of the main lot that we use. All right, just to give you quick stats of VR revenue of 2016, there's been about 1.8 billion made thus far. And total devices shipped is about 6.3 million. That was as of last year. Off the top of my head, I mean, honestly, you're going to see a big allotment over here. China is building up their industry fairly largely, but they're doing a lot of their own, I want to say, creation technologies. However, Vive has been supporting them very extensively. So I would expect a bunch of Vives to be out there. However, just through Samsung's initiative with their Galaxy phones, essentially that number you can expect worldwide. So, you know, they had a whole promotion, anyone who gets a Samsung phone, you get a Gear VR. It's still running even with the recent S8. And the recent model of the Gear VR actually has a remote with it now, similar to the Daydream View. So now you can even, you know, get another degree of freedom in there by swapping some wands and such. Now, Web VR, I'm just going to touch on this real briefly because it's still actively growing. But in my own opinion, I feel like this might be one of the largest, I want to say, growing in terms of the massive consumer. And that is because you can just open this from any old browser. Right now, there's a few browsers that permanently work with Web VR. You'll have Chromium? Yeah. And also certain versions of Firefox also work. However, obviously that's going to continue to build out. They have different APIs that you can use. One of them that actually one of our developers is working with is A-Frame. And essentially it just allows anyone to go into an experience from their phone, from a computer, from anywhere, as long as you have internet access. And that's obviously super great because now we don't need a headset, we don't need anything else for a massive consumer to take part in an experience. So, you know, I'd be on the heavy lookout for doing anything Web VR related in the coming years. So as I spoke about A-Frame, also you have Visor. It's a web app that allows you to create these scenes. Then you have another one, Responsive Web VR. And then you have the major components to even create VR. You have to decide on hardware because there's obviously different optimizations that you'll have with any hardware that you're developing for. Obviously learn whatever software necessary or get the right people involved. Shameless promotion. Make or find the assets. 3D artist is definitely very necessary if you're creating in full animation. However, if you're recording something, using some high quality 360 cameras, you can create a solid experience as well. Spatial audio is going to become more and more prevalent, especially in recording, as we continue to build these experiences out. Just because you can have any type of 360 video, but without, if I'm hearing sound all around, but it's not drawing me anywhere, then it really is pointless to a certain degree. And then implementing interactivity, that's obviously number one with it. The more interactive it is, the more immersive it becomes for the person that you're developing it for. All right, so now let's go over some brief topics on augmented reality. All right. So what is it? I mean, essentially, all augmented reality is just overlaying some 3D objects in our real world. That doesn't necessarily mean they're spatially aware. However, that does mean you can interact with them. Sometimes you use targets, so wherever a target goes, you'll display a certain 3D image on. And it's mostly utilized on mobile devices. Obviously, we've seen AR has become fairly prominent with Pokemon Go. It's kind of one of the largest brands that you'll see that uses AR, but it's not technically seen as AR. Also, Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat is technically AR as well, just with facial recognition. So a lot of people are saying that AR may pick up first. A lot of people are saying VR pick up first. I think they're all going to pick up, and it's not really going to matter as long as we're involved in it. So this is just going more on what I was discussing. Here are some the augmented reality tools that they have available now in terms of SDKs. One I'm heavily prominent on is Vuforia. Fairly simple. They give you a lot of walkthroughs. Some other ones might be a little bit, might need to know a little bit more knowledge to work with. But with Vuforia's SDK, that goes straight into Unity. It allows you to create experiences, honestly, probably within about 30 minutes. So as I've told you, I was partnered with the VR University. So we've taught multiple Vuforia experiences, so I definitely recommend checking it out. And now we're getting to the good stuff, mixed reality. Essentially, what mixed reality, through what I'm about to explain, allows you to record or superimpose an individual within a VR experience. So one of the major issues right now with VR is that, all right, how do we show someone else VR? How do we say, hey, here's this really amazing experience that I really want you to show, be in and go in, but I need to put you in a headset, or we need to go to my friend's house who has a headset over here, and they let me try it out, and it's been awesome. You know what I mean? Well, how do you explain it? Well, I don't know. You can move your head around, you can do this, you can, fly if you really like to, depending on the experience. And everyone's like, all right, well, I need to try it. I don't get it. It doesn't click for me. You know what I mean? Everyone who tries an experience, it clicks. It's like, oh my God, I need more of this immediately. And so this is where mixed reality comes in. So just to give you a little bit of heads up, so this whole mixed reality trailers behind the scenes is done by someone named Kurt Garner, if I'm correct. He's kind of been one of the major proponents to figuring out how to even showcase VR. To get it to the general consumer, and has actually made a lot of the trailers for some of the most popular apps, actually. So Job Simulator, he made that one. I think he did the Rick and Morty one. I think one he didn't help out with, but eventually did, I think, for a larger base, was Fantastic Contraption. However, there's a bunch of different solutions that everyone's been involved in that I'll go over real briefly because it gets a little technical. So how does it work? I mean, long story short, it's just kind of superimposing. So we put a green screen behind someone in a VR experience, right? We have a background, we have a foreground, and then we also have an alpha layer, and we put those all together. Utilizing free tools, which I always love free everything, as I mentioned with Unity. Vuforia is also free. OBS is actually what we utilize. So that's open broadcast software. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to live stream and also record mixed reality. So we're able to live stream this straight to Periscope. We're able to live stream it straight to Facebook, straight to obviously Twitch, any platform that you really like. And obviously that then gives you more of an edge just to then showcase, hey, all right, well, here's this new experience that we have, and here's someone in it experiencing it. So this is just giving you an idea. Unity has their own plugin built into it, so you'll hear me mention Unity a lot. So Unity has provided a plugin that automatically separates anything that you create in it. That then allows you, you guys kind of mentioned it earlier, but Unity is one of the main engines to create any type of VR and AR experience. They have recently, since I know a lot of you are film buffs, included some tools to now utilize 360 film within it. So literally within about 3 steps you can create a sphere, literally click and drag and move a 360 video on there, just put the camera in the center, and then now you have your own 360 movie application. So now with this plugin, whether you were to actually develop that application or not, you can actually just plug this in and then straight from Unity itself play it and then start recording just to even showcase your experience. So it doesn't even mean that you have to actually develop that. That just means you can just do it just to actually show someone what it's like to be in the experience. And then obviously if it's a 360 video or whatever, throw it up on Vimeo, throw it up on YouTube or wherever your main source is. So why shoot in it? So you see she's having awesome fun here. Honestly, it's just the best way to convey what's actually happening in virtual reality to a 2D screen. So as I said, with OBS, this is really all it takes to composite it. We have main video, which is what we'll use. I'll go over the tools, but we use a capture card that's connected even to this GoPro, but you can use obviously higher quality cameras. Set up that main video feed, set up the background and foreground. That's pretty much it, and you'll live stream it. So 3 key factors is compositing the player into the virtual environment, and then bring some of the virtual environment to the real world also. And then you can film an in-game avatar inside the environment with a physical camera. So by that I mean we could take VR avatar. So let's say if I was cosplaying in VR, if you guys heard of Mindshow, they have like a green screen application kind of, or excuse me, background setup, so I can be like a monster or something, and drop them into my house. And then have a conversation with them, and it could be one of my friends talking through them, and then it'll look like very seamless without having to do any extra animated features. I can live stream this immediately. Alright, so here's what you'll need. Obviously, to even record in this type of setup, you need a VR headset. I use a Vive in this example, but you'll need a third controller, but now it's a little dated. You can use a Vive tracker or something like that. Honestly, it depends on what you're doing, whether it's your own development or you're just showcasing, some of the stuff that's already on there, and that really then starts to alter the support on what you would have to do for it, because obviously some are very easy, some have it built in, and then other apps don't have anything. Sorry, let me just turn that off. Cool. I'll get into why the third controller is super important in a second, but obviously you'll need a camera, you'll need the software, which we already talked about, OBS, you'll need a capture card, green screens, and then optionally a mic. Depends if you want to talk and stuff, or if you just want music to play in the background. So a studio setup, which I've done for John, I've done for Mark, and Maria, who's left tomorrow. And is also going to be on site tomorrow to actually record some of you guys in the experiences. But essentially, we usually set up 2 green screens, so we have like a corner blocked off. We'll set up you in that area. We'll have a PC and a connection set up, kind of similar to that. And you'll kind of just be in it. Obviously, you'll see what's going on, but then we'll be projecting what's actually happening inside so that we can give everyone else a view of it. I've included this here. I mentioned earlier I'm going to include this presentation later, so there's a lot of wealth of knowledge to do anything mixed reality in here that I definitely advise you if you're interested to get into. And then, as I said, it depends on the game or app setup. So TiltBrush actually allows you to do mixed reality fairly easily. They have a built-in third virtual camera. So literally you would just take it and place it in the same area where your physical camera is, and then you can sync up that view. Obviously there does take some little bit of tweaking, but I'll get into that in a second. Space Pirate Trainer, obviously you'll see here, is another application that has a little bit of setup involved just because it doesn't really have a well built-in solution. Some games that do have good setups are Serious Sam, Fantastic Contraption has it built in as well. But as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's not too hard to really create your own. So now that's where we get to the pain point, the camera sync. So the key in mixed reality recording is syncing where your virtual camera is located within the space you're in with where your physical camera is located in the space. So that's usually where it's going to take a little bit of configuring to do. Thankfully, we have this dude over here. It's a simple YouTube video. He created an awesome mixed reality sync tool for us that kind of gives you an average range of where your camera is after setting up some points around your area. And then it allows you to then sync that physical camera there. So what you usually do, just to give you an example because I don't want to go through the whole internet thing again, is you'll set up markers in your studio space. And then with a Vive controller, you mark where these markers are, and then it gives you an average point of where you've placed that virtual camera. Then after you do that, you have controls to kind of shift the room view around to then line up those markers exactly. You'll also have a Vive controller outline that you can align with your hand. Super, super helpful because there's a lot of math involved to try to figure it out otherwise. So thank God for this guy. All right? However, like I said, probably within any active, once you start to do it, honestly, it takes me about 15, 20 minutes max, to really get a good viewpoint and make sure everything's aligned. And then once you have it set up, it's one and done. You actually save that config. What I do now is I tape the ground where the physical camera is, and then you can just take that configuration and throw it anywhere. And then easily live stream all the time so that you're not wasting time resetting it up over and over again. So this is where we start to get a little bit more technical into the different things that you can run into while trying to film. So frame rates. Right now, still kind of shaky to be filming at high frame rates, but it also depends on what you're doing. You know what I mean? So if you're in a heavy use application that you want to record, that's not necessarily optimized in the best way, you might get a lot of jankiness. You might want to turn down the FPS on your actual camera that you're recording at. However, there have been times where we're not doing too much. As I mentioned with Mind Show, I have a virtual character in my real space. He's not even moving around too much. We've been able to actually produce 60 frames per second at that. So as I said, some situations where there isn't much of player or camera movement, so you kind of leave the camera there, you do 60 frames per second and it might look fine. However, and this is where I'll get into why we needed that third controller or tracker, specifically with the Vive, being able to track where you're located allows you to now get dynamic shots. So now I'm able to take a physical camera instead of having it stationed there, and now once I'm already in the application, be able to move it around. And since it's now tracked, it'll actually update that configuration and reposition the camera and always sync your virtual view with your live view. So then, I can get angles, we can get real creative at that point. Lighting and green screens, obviously, I'm sure you guys are pros at this. I don't need to explain why lighting and green screens are super important. But the end result, just to give you a brief, if you're going to do anything in terms of your chroma keys for taking out the green screens and such, you don't want certain greens to be taken out of your actual physical person, so you want to make sure that the color balance is right, and obviously lighting helps that. So then you can also do it kind of backwards. So this is kind of similar to what I've been explaining with the Mind Show situation, but kind of just taking the virtual objects and then putting them into your space without using green screens or anything. And that's sometimes actually very, very awesome. I've used this in TiltBrush sometimes when we just want to throw up a quick live stream, but not, do the whole green screens everywhere and stuff like that. The only thing is, when doing this, what we usually do is just put all the objects in the foreground. Because obviously, since we have no green screen, it's going to be hard for it to tell what's in the background, what's in the foreground. So once we just put them all in front of you, what I usually do, and you'll see what she's kind of doing, you're kind of like to the side of it. You know what I mean? And by recording to the side, not that they would know that, you're technically always behind it. So it's a little bit of a visual trick, but it still gives you a great quality view, and then it kind of looks a little bit more interesting. It's like, yeah, I'm playing with this weird cat contraption right in my house, you know what I mean? Or I'm drawing right in my house instead of in Space World or wherever the environment is. Or, like I said, with Mind Show, I got this head of spinach talking with me right inside my house, or Mr. Twinkie guy. In case you haven't seen Mind Show, they have like a Twinkie character. He has like a chomp out of his head. Alright, anyway. So I'll get into another way that we can capture mixed reality. which is obviously, I went to, you guys missed kind of like my whole intro. But I'm a HoloLens developer, and the reason why I love HoloLens is because it has mixed reality built in. So what's special about the HoloLens is it's one of the only devices that's untethered, so you don't need a computer. The holographic computing unit is built onto the actual headset. It actually spatially maps your whole location, so it creates a 3D object of the actual space you're in, which then allows you to geolocate and place your 3D objects within this space, within a living space essentially. And that's what creates that mixed reality experience, because in the HoloLens it now understands your area, and now you're able to place any digital object within that said area, and it stays there. So you can then turn off the HoloLens, you can come back, you know, we could set up a scene right here, or what we're gonna do tomorrow at the VR experience is set up a scene. I will then leave, you know, for a year, and then next year when we're here again, I can come back and just say, hey, look at all this cool stuff that we had up here, guys. It's still here, all right? Oh, that moved a little bit. There we go. Now that's super important. Why this is important? Well, going into how the HoloLens works, if it understands your environment, then the actual characters and avatars that you may have in an experience also understands this environment. So what if we were to potentially understand that these were all chairs? Now I could create an experience where, which we're going to be showing tomorrow, where you're a detective and you have, let's say, the commissioner giving you a case, and they could be sitting right on your couch next to you and talking to you and saying, hey, you know what I mean, we have this case happening right now, you know, do you understand what we need to do and accomplish? Now we're at a whole nother level of immersiveness, because now it's not only just going into their world, now they're in our world and understanding our real space simultaneously, without any targets, without anything extra than the device itself. Another example, which is honestly one of the better methods of what I've seen in terms of utilization for recording mixed reality, is this specific camera, the ZED or Z, stereo depth camera. So essentially, it's like a 3D camera. It's able to understand the depth. What does that allow us to do? Well, as I mentioned earlier with OBS, when there's a foreground and a background, all right, this camera automatically understands this. So now, you know, instead of cutting that shift in between, you only have one layer with this camera, and the camera by itself understands that this object is in front of me, and I'm able to move my hand around it, and it doesn't matter what ground it's in, as long as you have just OBS set up. I can move, there's a couple great examples with this, and actually this is what Fantastic Contraption used, which is this application. The only problem with this camera right now is that it's not super high quality, you know, so obviously you're not going to be recording live footage as you would with a DSLR. However, just that functionality takes away from the added setup you may have to do otherwise. However, it is a small investment. It's about like $500, but it's definitely recommended if you're really into this. I've just included over here a couple different articles about how other production companies are creating their own mixed reality setups. Obviously, you know, I mentioned earlier with Unity, they have a plugin built in, and most of these applications are built within Unity. There's a couple of UE ones. Yeah. So just to give you a quick example, so Serious Sam is kind of similar to how I explained with the mixed reality configuration. Kind of has you point your Vive controllers at it at a certain range, it marks that spatial alignment out, and then once it aligns it, then it'll just plop it right into the space. It's super easy to do, and they created an amazing solution. Another one was for the unspoken. It's kind of meh, to be honest. What I've been giving you is honestly some of the easiest setup that you can do. So I wouldn't really go too into theirs, but we'll see what they'll wind up doing. I do want to mention, since I don't think I have them here, that just recently Alchemy, which is the creators of Job Solution, and Job Simulator, and the Rick and Morty experience, which recently came out, have updated their own mixed reality plugin. And now they allow you to do lighting straight within the actual program itself. So now you can, the actual objects in your space, if like, let's say I set a fire over here, that lighting will now affect the real person. Alright, so now it creates another immersive level into us recording this mixed reality situation. So like lighting works, I think certain like gravity works, so if something like bounces on you, it'll recognize that you're in that area, bounce off of you. There's a couple little cool tools that they've added to it. So to come into this, how does 3D scanning fit into this, right? This is actually one of my friends. He didn't look too happy. I had made him sit in a chair for a while. I'm like, stay right there, don't move. Well, this is more of something that I've been doing, as I haven't seen too many people just yet, but I'm very certain it's going to pick up. But essentially, with being able to scan any individual, I'm now able to take that 3D model of them, and similar to how I showed you earlier with the Atom demo, to create a whole skeleton within their model that I've just scanned and created, and then I'll put them into any experience that I want. So now it's no longer really a factor about, you know, oh, do I need this 3D artist, do I need this, do I need that? And you'll see tomorrow I actually have this device, it's called a structure sensor. It's real cheap, it works about $500, so everything's like I don't know why $500 is just like that medium for everything. But it works with the iPad, you connect it right up, and gets fairly good models. This is actually like a super cheapy version I made of this guy. They've updated the application a couple different times now that have actually calibrated it more and more, made it better and better. It can also capture whole room spaces as well, similar to what a HoloLens can do, which is also slightly important depending on what you're trying to create. And honestly, just a great tool. So once we start scanning some individuals, I can now kind of hang out with all my friends in a stream session and have none of them there and just pretend like I actually have friends still.
Hey, what's up? This is CrossFit Kale. Went to Woody Harrelson's Sundance Party last night. Oh man, it was more like Sundank, if you know what I'm saying, so I definitely felt at home. Matthew McConaughey kept talking about his bongos, but I didn't see any drums around, right? Everybody chilled out when Al Gore showed up with a lockbox of his homegrown, inconvenient kush. And I gotta tell you, climate change has never been more chill. In case you couldn't tell, I look like weed, kinda. All right, y'all, I gotta get out of here. I got an appointment to be in a bowl in front of Harvey Weinstein with some champagne, vinaigrette, and 5. Peace.
3 launch games that are coming out with the Vive.
I always say
So when they approached me, I was really excited about it. I mean, I just really wanted to be all over this kind of thing. My background is in visual effects, and I used to work on a whole bunch of different Hollywood movies. After I got out of the visual effects industry, I sort of transitioned into video games and started doing more motion graphics. But these 2 trailers are the first ones that really merged those skills in like a really nice way. So generally speaking, I'm literally a one-man shop in my basement making game trailers, but for this, I knew we would need a green screen studio, we need a camera crew, we need people on set, we need actors, and so all of a sudden your needs are just growing exponentially. So we called Handcraft, and they were like, yes, let's do this. And so then we started figuring, okay, what cameras are going to be shooting with? What are we going to use to stabilize the camera? We need to figure out which camera would actually fit in the stabilizers, and like, you know, how do we attach the third Vive controller to that? And will that throw the camera off? And blah, 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 blah. It just keeps mounting on top, right? And we did that first test in the basement, and I put it on Twitter and just exploded. People were like, whoa, my God, that's crazy. And so we knew we were onto something.
But today here we're recording VR trailers, which is kind of this new thing that people haven't think about before, and we're doing that with a green screen and some mixed reality stuff where we can kind of superimpose people into the actual game with the hope of being able to explain to people what VR is like, actually showing people inside VR for the first time. That's really magical, and I think will kind of allow people to understand without trying it just a little bit of what this stuff is going to be like. Job Simulator is a game coming out for all 3 VR platforms, the Vive, the Oculus with the Touch, and PlayStation VR. It's a game where robots have taken over all jobs. It's the year 2050, and so they created the simulator to simulate what jobs used to be like, so these future humans can experience what it's like to job.
Fantastic Attraction is a video game for VR where you use your hands and you walk around and you make a contraption, so you make a machine. You use these simple tools, you use just reels and sticks, and you basically try to get from over here to over there.
Basically, every single time we would do a take on set, there was like this checklist of things that we need to go through. So like, the first thing we would do is make sure that the camera is rolling, and then make sure that I'm capturing gameplay on the computer. And we would have to get people to do a calibration of their hands with the controllers visible. And the reason we needed to do that is we needed some way to align the footage from the gameplay and the camera in post-production. So the screen would be split up into a foreground layer, a background layer, a composited layer, and then what the player was actually seeing through the head-mount display. So we're capturing all 4 of these views live at the exact same time as they were playing.
It was awesome. Kurt's crazy. As soon as we had our first Skype call with Kurt and he was telling us all his ideas, I was like, that's impossible. And after we saw the first few of his screen tests, it was pretty mind-blowing.
People aren't going to realize how much work this was. It's like, oh, they shot it on green screen, it's all computer. But no, what we actually did is we shot the gameplay live. So the gameplay was actually being captured at the exact same time. We didn't go in Cinema 4D or Maya and rebuild all this stuff. So literally it took 2 days of doing rough composites of every single one of these shots and just layering everything in, lining them all up exactly on the right frame, and spitting that all out with this big collection of files. Then once you have that, you can actually start looking at it and sifting through the footage. It's really the best way to showcase virtual reality. It's the best way to show that that person is in that environment and manipulating those objects. And a lot of people just say you have to try it and look to experience it. And I think that these mixed reality videos are the best way that we can get that feeling across, in a 2D form without having the headset on. Being involved in the first of these kind of things is really, really fun. It's fun to work through all the technical problems, and it's fun to figure out how to shoot in VR and what things you need to do to make that look good. So it was stressful, but it was really exciting at the same time.
I'm a visual effects artist. We both are. We do kind of visual effects films, okay. And a lot of what we do is we take the footage and we do a 3D camera solve. So it's a lot of what you get for free by that last video we saw where you have the remote on the gimbal itself. So you're basically creating a virtual camera on the fly.
Yep.
So that interests me because instead of having to take the footage that I shoot, get a 3D solve, do all that 3D tracking work, you just get it as long as you have the camera, as long as you have that
the remote on the tracker on where your physical camera is. Yep.
Is this workflow that I just made up for what I want to do? I don't really necessarily need to do all the in-game live stuff, real-time stuff. So how
possible is it?
Yeah, for that to be so easy.
So remember how I explained with the configuration of where your physical and virtual camera is located in space, right? So they have that tool, the mixed reality configurator, to kind of position them. Once they're positioned and you start up, let's say, your experience that you want to show it in, since it's being tracked by either the remote or the tracker, I can now take that physical camera and move it off. And let's say it was originally on a gimbal, and now take it and now move it around, and it'll continue to track where the virtual camera is, and currently, consistently update that configuration that's created or outputted from it. So then, because of that, now I can take it, move it around, get the same similar live shot that you get to your animated shot, all at the same time without having to do any extra work.
So we need the markers on the wall kind of
idea?
So
once you configure where those positions are, then you're able to then just kind of rock and roll once you start it up.
And that would be a file through Unity?
So literally it's just a configuration file. So it's a .config that gets outputted from that little, it's actually like a web app. So once it's outputted, you actually put that into any experience that you're going to be utilizing. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously, from a standpoint, if you have the actual application to then work on and do it in. So that's where I mentioned if it was something that you were developing and you could potentially showcase in Unity, that would make it a little bit easier for you. So that's where it's with that plugin, that will obviously create the alpha, the foreground, background layers for you. By combining all those tools together is kind of what you'll utilize to kind of create this. Otherwise, you would kind of have to do some post work and sum it all up together.
Yeah, something to look into. Because these companies spend so much money trying to 3D solve these shots. Just think about every effects film you see in Hollywood, someone's got to figure out how to replicate the actual live camera. Yep. There needs to be a virtual camera, but we talk about this all the time. If you can just have some kind of thing on your camera, and then it kind of captures some kind of virtual metadata.
Yep.
The XYZ space, or in this case, you use trackers.
That is what the configuration does. The configuration gives you all the X, Y, Z spaces, and obviously Z, X, Z, Y, and all the other math factors on it. and then literally, like I said, depending on what you're doing with it, because you know, for your example, it might be something where you already have your workflow, and then now we're just trying to record it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because of that, it might be involved with, obviously, once you set up the alignments for where the camera is and stuff, and we're just now recording that experience, you know, you'd be able to take that out. But it might be a little bit difficult for you since you're not technically already in like Unity or anything.
It'd be like a hack.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's where it's going to go, and I think it's going to get easier and easier over time. So it's just a matter of figuring out how it can work for your specific stuff that you're working on. You know what I mean?
But have you seen the Lightroom Cinema camera?
You kind of showed it with Ted from, or used to be Ted from Red, the guy.
Yeah.
He does that, right? He's a salesman for Lytro.
Shulwitz? Oh, that was for HyperVR. But yeah, the Lightroom Cinema camera also, it's a light field camera, but it's not like the 360 camera. It's like a traditional film camera that detects depth. So it's like it's a really interesting way of just like cutting out easily without like, you know, because cameras don't normally understand like that people aren't attached to green. Yeah.
It's like a Canon. It's
like right. Yeah. No,
well, technically that Z camera that I mentioned is similar. It's just a lower, you know, consumer model. So that may be something you might want to look into to getting and even testing with, just because that also understands stereo depth. Because then now it's like, all right, well, how about just positioning where things are then in that space?
Right.
So that may be a solution that may work with you. I don't know. We can send some info that I can see if I can find a better formulated solution for that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, please.
Does the HoloLens need like sensors set up in the room like the...
Totally untethered, no sensors, all inside-out tracking.
So it must do something like...
It spatially maps your location.
Right, from the set.
Yep.
Like
every second. Every second. Consistently updates the mapping.
The way it does it is by using like the two stereo lenses on it, and like through the stereo, it detects depth, and it's interesting because that's the way that iPhone 7 Pro also detects depth.
Like it processes the image itself.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe you know better than I do exactly how it works.
Well, literally, what it does is it doesn't process the image; it recreates the actual, like what it does is as it maps it in the device itself, it creates an actual 3D object of your space.
Figure out the depth by comparing the two images and seeing the respective change, or like is it another kind of sensor like the Kinect that actually does something?
Like actually tells you, hey, this is this far. To get a little bit technical, through using both cameras, it now says, okay, this is exactly this far. So it recognizes like certain meshes. So it says, all right, this is a flat. So I'm going to move this a flat space and then record it in the actual object. So really what it does is it just marks down what that object is. And then once it creates it, which you can export, you can reutilize, you can do everything that you want with that specific 3D model of the space. So for instance, once I'm here, all it does is say, okay, how far can I go? Like how far until I hit something? That's it. And then once it marks that, it then creates an actual mesh on it. And then it continues to create meshes all across it. And
Does
then,
that get textures too?
It doesn't get textures.
That'd be cool.
It'd be awesome if it got textures.
Well, structure does
the
though,
structure
right?
sensor though gets
The
textures.
canvas app? Yeah.
Well, imagine that when you're talking about it casting lighting on your environment, that must, it's not a texture, but it's like a mesh that is projection.
Where
The HoloLens? 3000.
2000.
Jeez. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mess.
There goes that 500 number.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's where it's clocked out.
It might start to get cheaper though, because they have their conference next month, or a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, Build is coming up. I think it might be even next week.
Yeah.
I start getting a lot more emails about it. Build. So
Yeah.
that means it's coming ASAP. So I think it might even be next week.
Yeah, and then they're probably rushing it because Apple is also supposed to be heavily into AR. Like when I was at South by, a lot of people were talking about it, and
even though I don't expect anything crazy.
I don't either, but it is. I mean, like they are.
But they are a major player in the game.
Right, and they bought the companies that did this. Like they bought them like 3 years ago. So it's about time that they made something with it, and it's sort of built into
to the
new
recent
phone.
phone.
So
They should have honestly, like the phone is capable of producing mixed reality right now.
Right.
I'm surprised that they haven't moved faster with it. But then again, I understand that the whole shift with Apple that's been in play. They're moving.
They're usually pretty like don't tell you anything, but they actually mentioned that during the conference. Like he's like, yeah, we had to rush to get this out because they were using the depth sensing for like bokeh, which
Yeah.
looked ridiculous. It's like,
Nonsense.
it's like, okay, yeah, because all these people with are going to start becoming photographers with their cameras, with camera phones. But yeah, I mean, he showed it for 2 seconds in that reveal that they had it had full depth sensing capabilities, and he showed the depth sensing map. You know, like, you know what that looks like? It's like white against black, and then it's like a gradient as it gets further away.
If you were to open this up on your phone, you know, you can go ahead if you wanted to on the URL up there. But it also works if you just simply moving your phone around, and you don't have to download anything extra. You don't have to do anything extra other than just go to the site. And that's where I think it's going to be fairly powerful and fairly widely, I want to say, known in terms of mass consumption and creation.
There's also a WebVR meetup that's pretty good too.
Yeah, if you guys are into meetups, meetup.com. I'm heavy in meetups. I would recommend this, especially if you're want to get involved in the VR in general, or even just to get an idea of what's going on. Because I think this is going to start intersecting a lot of different industries as a couple of years start to go by. Recommend you check it out. There's several. There's someone just 360 filming, someone Marcus with animation, Nights NY. They even have their own VR offerings over there pretty consistently. I think they just did a HoloLens session not too long ago.
We did, yeah.
There's WebVR, there's VR, or VR NY, or NY VR, I always forget, it's like one of the more prominent ones. Even the one I'm a part of, VRU, that's where we teach people how to do VR, develop for VR, develop for AR, also create 360 film experiences and such. So I definitely recommend checking it out because you'll get to know our community that we have over here, as well as start to get information from some of the other companies that are creating and developing their own experiences or their own products.
I have one last question of mine. It's about 3D scanning.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of just briefly tell you my workflow,
Please.
and then maybe tell me what yours is, or where mine ends and yours kind of begins in terms of AR, or what I could do better. Okay. So I'll do one of two things. First one is photogrammetry. We'll say it's like a T-pose person. I'll do that because then to rig and her later, right? Second one is the structure, the occipital structure sensor, and you just walk around. I use It Sees It 3D. That app seems to be maybe the best. You tell me.
I think it sees 3D. Yes, the main structure app that you can use is all right. Like, depending on your environment and depending on what you're utilizing the scan, you may get better factors from different apps or not. And the app I was discussing is 123 Catch, I think it was. That was made by Hololens. No, they took that off. Because now they want you to pay for it. Basically, they made like a paid model version of it.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, 123 Catch is gone.
Sucks.
Yeah, and that was honestly one of the best ones. Like, so right now I want to say It Sees is still like pretty much like top for at least people.
Yeah.
However, if you have a better camera, I would recommend downloading potentially this program called Agisoft. It's a little bit hard to work with though. Yeah. I know the workflows on that are a little bit tough. However, we found in our experience that once you get a workflow down, and what we usually do is, let's say for a specific model, we put something on actual
turntable.
Thank you. I always want to call it something else because I always think DJ every time turntable. But for an object, we throw it on a turntable. We get the lighting all around it. We set up the tripod for the actual camera. Same thing, we do adjustments of heights. We usually get per model of anything around 190-ish pictures.
Okay.
Is usually our range.
Okay.
And then from there, it really just goes through the Agile software flow. There's plenty of tutorials, however, I'm not going to lie, not all of them are good. Like, not at all. However, you can also go through Autodesk app. I think it's called, don't quote me, it's either Make or Recreate. Those are kind of like the paid for versions for what 123 Catch was doing. It might be Remake and Recreate or something along the lines of that. But that also kind of works similar to Agisoft of obviously taking your photogrammetry and then reloading it.
So that takes us to this. We're doing the same thing at this point.
Yep.
Now, she's in T-pose, right? Yep. So I work in Cinema 4D. I'll create like a basic biped skeleton or have a stock one. And then Adobe offers like a ton of, as long as you're part of the Creative Suite, a ton of free vocab, fun stuff. And now I'll just apply that to the skeleton, bind it to the scanned figure, and then you have a scanned person just doing back.
do it. Yeah, Mixamo, yeah.
Right, yeah, Mixamo. So are you, is Mind Show like a way that you drive your skeletons, or is that through Unity?
So we primarily use Unity. There's actually a tool in Unity. Because as I mentioned, I actually started using from the Atom demo, and then sometimes I want to do cooler things than I can physically do, similar like backflips and things. I definitely can't do any of those front flips. I can barely do any yoga poses at this point. So they actually have a tool that similar to yours gives you that kind of model, that biped model, and then literally you're just attaching the 3D model to that, and then each point you can then record your animation. So it's like you set a recording of it, and then I can move each area, and then it's just about speeding it up or slowing it down to then give you, obviously give you that mocap or stop motion type of scenario. However, through Unity also, through obviously some of the new hardware that they have, so for instance, trackers right now, right? That's essentially they're just recreation of the controllers. So a lot of people are doing right now just, send the tracker on one leg here, one leg there, one on the waist, you already have the arms, sometimes one on top of your head, but you already have the visor, but it also depends on what you're doing, because I've seen setups, for instance, like a multiplayer setup, where I want to have a person who doesn't have a vibe involved in the VR experience, but not like truly immersed. So you could put a tracker on their head to just understand where they're tilting, and then also have a tracker on like an iPad, and then I can see within what the person's working on. That's just a little bit of side note. So back to it. We then set up the model. Once we set up the biped model and attach the actual 3D model to it, with the trackers, I can then either do it myself, and it'll track me and say, hey, okay, I'm cool. Or for instance, like I said, I can move that through that tool. It's another, well, I have a free one. I don't know if it's still free, but I have a free one that allows you to just kind of, obviously reposition that model out as you want it.
And this is we talk about the Vive or the...
Well, no, that's just in Unity. That's a Unity tool in general. You don't need a Vive or anything.
What is tracking your...
So with a Vive, that is the Vive trackers.
Yeah, you need to have that to capture, to record the mocap.
Yep.
To record the data. Okay.
And the sensors? So
Yeah, that comes with the Vive.
Okay, but those trackers you're talking about
are tracked by the sensors, yeah.
And those are like new things that
trackers were released, I think maybe around November, I think, or not released, but at least started to be thrown out to give, and I think they were officially launched around January, February.
Okay. Seems like a handy DIY mocap setup.
I mean, pretty easy, and like you said, if you already have a model down, like after you've done all your work in it, you can literally just throw it into Unity, and then all it is just free tools, SDKs to throw in, and there's plenty of tutorials on it, but literally you throw in the SDK in there, and then it understands what the trackers are, you then link all the trackers, then you just literally press play, and then now I can move my guy around everywhere I want. And then now we can get into other situations like we talked about with like mixed reality recording or anything like that. Yeah. Because then it's literally a simple process, just throwing the model, connecting it up, and doing stuff.
It's funny because our work is like mixed reality, but we do it the hard way. Like we composite everything. Yeah, we do it like the old school compositing way.
I mean, this is still very new. It's still, like I said, a little tough right now, but we are expecting it to definitely become easier, faster, better, stronger. We can listen to some Daft Punk when I say that. But it sounds like since you're already doing it and you're kind of interested, maybe we should touch base and I can show you all the goods.
We've been up and down the Google Highway. Conceivably, you can prepare for the HoloLens world through the Vive because it has the camera through. But we found a total lack of software, forget Steam, where you could actually treat the Vive like a HoloLens. But conceivably, that can happen. What's the trail of breadcrumbs?
Well, one reason why I probably even wouldn't see it as such is because it doesn't really allow you any kind of good pass-through. Like when that front-facing camera, you're not getting super good quality out of it.
Do you know any program that will let you see that front?
Well, it's not about just seeing it because it doesn't understand depth. You know what I mean? It's just one facing camera. All it is just a flat lens. You're getting no depth map based off of it. So that's really where the trackers come in handy to obviously just know where you're generally positioned. However, you can, select it to say, all right, I want to record through this lens, but you'll still kind of have to superimpose, let's say, the other objects or the space around you in there if you were to try to, let's say, record a certain scenario or wanted to showcase it.
Well, conceivably, you could cobble that together, right?
I want to say conceivably, yes, but would it be recommended? No. I mean, there's just better, one, it's not really what the Vive was made for, so it's kind of, you're working harder to create a scenario that really doesn't, isn't going to be optimal, I would say.
So you'd have to jury rig a Gen 1, Gen 2 Connect to the top of the helmet.
It wouldn't have to be to the top. Technically, you could have it across. You know what I mean? So we've actually done experiments like that. So you can now, use a general Connect just facing you, and it's able to track your legs and feet, and then I can move a model around through that. I said legs and feet, legs and arms. And that was without a Vive. We didn't even have a Vive for that. We used just strictly Unity and a Connect. I could actually send you the stuff. I have plenty of info on that. However, once again, it's a little bit shoddy in terms of actually moving people and how much range of motion you have, because there's no locomotion involved, so it doesn't, you know what I mean? At a certain point, I'm going to get too close to the Connect, and certain things are going to be tracked. Where that's where you kind of have to cobble a couple other things together to then say, all right, I want to move in place, but still understand that I'm actually moving within that world and such.
Okay.
You can always reach me. My name is Brandon Enriquez. Once again, I can be reached at brandon@pretendlabs.nyc. It's fairly simple, not too hard. If you want to reach out, touch base, talk, obviously we're going to be sharing a bunch of stuff that I have up there. There's a lot of more info to this, and thank you guys so much.